Welcome to the Hyper Voice. I am your host, Stephen Morioka, and I am joined today by Alex Underhill.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And boy oh boy, it is finally time to talk about Sun and Moon stuff. Can you believe it?
I am ready and excited as ever.
It's just crazy that it's already November. We just came back. I remember coming back from Worlds and thinking, wow, we gotta wait for Sun and Moon still 2 months now.
We still got a long week ahead of us. It'll go fast, but it's also going to drag on super slow just because of the anticipation.
Yeah, couldn't agree more there. But before we get on to Sun and Moon stuff that we're going to cover, we haven't covered any Sun and Moon stuff previously just because we wanted to try and avoid speculation as much as possible, but we're at a point now where it's kind of needed, and it'll be finally fun to cover this stuff. But before we do that, we are just going to let everyone know we are talking about stuff from the official trailers from Pokemon's official YouTube channel. And, things that were officially released on their website as well. So if you have not seen any of those yet, we're just letting you know there will be spoilers ahead. So you may want to stop listening here and just wait until later, till you've played through the game, whatever. If you've already seen all that official stuff, that's fine. You should be in no problem. In terms of other leaks and stuff, we are going to avoid those because we haven't even looked at some of them yet. Before we get to that, we're just going to talk briefly about the Fort Wayne Regional and London's International. So, Alex, you're going to the Fort Wayne Regional. What can you say about that and what's happening there?
Well, I'm really excited for it. It's gonna be kind of interesting because it'll be the last tournament for VGC 2016. I don't know if any other tournament, has a later date than that. There might be premier challenges or perhaps a regional over, somewhere else outside of the US, but it's the last North American regional, in the VGC 2016 format. It's gonna be very strange because Sun and Moon will have been out for, just over a week at this point. And I'm sure that's what everyone's going to be caring about and focusing on. And so, I from what I'm hearing, there might not be a stream there, which would make sense, just because if they start streaming VGC 2016 after Sun and Moon is coming out, it might confuse people. And I think it's probably for the best. We want Sun and Moon to help grow the game. We don't want to show all these big legendaries that a lot of people don't like to see. So it'd probably actually be better if Fort Wayne was not streamed, just so that we could, we wouldn't confuse people who have gotten Sun and Moon now and are starting to get interested in VGC, and then they see us playing a game that's been out for over 2 years now or so. And so, I really hope that Sun and Moon helps grow the game, and so I guess Fort Wayne should probably not be streamed, and it's looking to be that way. We'll see how it ends up once we officially get there, though.
Yeah, it would be nice if it were streamed, just in the situations where friends could watch their friends compete in there, and maybe just some people want to actually see the last competitive regional of the 2016 format. But I guess to move on from there, stream or no stream, good luck to everyone going there. Good luck to you. I know you're heading out there. I personally will not be heading out to Fort Wayne this year. But moving on to some other quick news here, we have the London International's information was officially released on the Pokemon's website, and they have, registration information up. They have a schedule up, when you need to be there, when everything is happening in that tournament. And it looks pretty similar to to US Nationals actually, where there's a day 1 and day 2 Swiss tournament. As far as if day 2 has a top cut of X and 2s, that was not confirmed yet. But I imagine it would have that.
Yeah, that's what we would like to see. We've talked about it in past episodes. Eliminating resistance is the best future moving forward. But that's kind of what we expect from bigger tournaments. We've seen it a lot in the US. We saw it at Worlds all the way up until the top cut. So hopefully we see X and 2 make it to the day 2, and then X and 2 make it into the top cut on that second day after Swiss.
Yes, absolutely. And that registration has officially opened on there, so if you plan on attending the International in London, it's going to be a great tournament over in Europe. And I guess I actually got my terminology wrong there. It's technically the Europe International, and it just happens to be held in London, and everyone keeps calling it the London International because of that. So, registration's open. If you're heading over there, make sure you register, pay that glorious entry fee, and good luck if you're going there. I know it's going to be an extremely exciting event to both play in and watch. You know, I know there will be a few premiere challenges in the first few weeks of December, and it's going to be exciting to, be playing and also having the opportunity to watch the international from over here in North America.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be watching the very first big tournament, and such a big tournament to start off the season. It's going to be all kinds of crazy. That's really, really exciting. And also, just a side note here, if you do plan on attending Fort Wayne Regional, the registration for that is already up. So if you want to go ahead and prepay, and so you don't have to worry about anything when you get there, you can go ahead and do that too for Fort Wayne Regionals if you plan on attending.
Bam! And you see, everyone, we're trying to keep you prepared for everything as much as possible. And speaking of being prepared, London is not very far off from when the game's actually released, and I imagine people would need to be prepared in their Sun and Moon games to compete at this tournament. So now we're going to kind of do a quick rundown of, really basic preparation things you can do to prepare for that tournament, or if you're playing in a local tournament here, anywhere else in the world, on a smaller scale, you'd probably want to be well conditioned for your tournament as well. So finally, Sun and Moon stuff. First off, guys, just enjoy the game when you play through it. Maybe some people don't like the regular gameplay, but, Alex has told me already how he's liked Pokemon, other than competitive Pokemon, just for the sake of playing the game.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to just playing it regularly. And while VGC is a huge part of my life, I also got into competitive Pokemon just because I wanted to kind of play Pokemon more, and the games can only take you so far, but, I always look for opportunities to replay old games, and when the new games come out, I'm always super excited just for the in-game gameplay. It's why I've got into VGC in the first place, is I'm a big fan of Pokemon, and I can't wait to play these games.
Yeah, a whole bunch of new things happening in Sun and Moon, so just enjoy the regular gameplay. They have the trials, which seemingly replace gym battles and things like that. In the trailers too, we saw the Pokemon League has not even been established yet. So, pretty cool things to see from the game so far. So, hoping everyone enjoys it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see, just mentioning those trials, if we don't see gyms anymore, they're really kind of spicing up the formula here that Pokemon's been following for so long. And I think that's great. It's great to see a change of pace, and kind of just throw some new life into the game that people wouldn't quite expect.
Yeah, and the way the regular games seem to always play out is there's a really finite limit to what you can do. Just like most other regular video games, you play through your story, there's a beginning, you get to the end, there's maybe a few post-game stuff, and then your game's pretty much done. And then if you can reach VGC and that type of level with the competitive Pokemon, then it really branches out to more of an infinite style of what you can do and participate in there.
Yeah, it's really cool that, I think I'm really excited to do some more breeding. I haven't bred a ton since I've had most of the Pokemon that I've needed for the past couple of tournaments that I've been playing in for VGC. But once Sun and Moon comes out, I'm going to have to start fresh again. I won't have any Pokemon to use as the bases, or any, good Dittos that I've captured with all the right natures and stuff like that. So I'm going to have to start breeding from scratch again, and that's going to be just kind of really fun. I really enjoyed what X and Y did for breeding, and it just made it so much easier. It made it possible to get these perfect Pokemon just from breeding, and that was really exciting for me. And so I'm really excited to get back into it, and as we saw from moving 5th gen to 6th gen, from Black and White 2 to XY, we saw a great number of changes added to make breeding easier. And then even from X and Y to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, we saw a couple more changes. They were minor, like introducing multiple routes to breed on and making it a lot easier to just bike in a circle in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, so you could hatch your eggs a lot easier. That was a really nice change, though. They're showing that they're interested in making breeding easier and easier, and I imagine that going forward, it's only going to get easier. And that's really exciting. It's going to make it a lot more accessible for other people to play. and I'm really excited to get back into breeding myself.
Yes, I'm hoping they retain the breeding mechanics they introduced in X and Y for 6th gen. Those were very, very friendly for both newer players and veterans alike. And, speaking of some new features that will help with people training, especially for VGC or anything competitive in that regard, is we saw there was a hyper training. And we all know that we don't know the full details on this yet, but presumably it will allow you to max out your IVs on each of your Pokemon. And you had just mentioned Ditto earlier. And wouldn't you think Ditto would be a great start to do that with your very first few bottle caps?
Yeah, definitely. I remember using Friend Safari back in X and Y to farm for a bunch of good Dittos with high IVs, and occasionally I got a 2 IV or 2 IVs where I think guaranteed, and then I got occasional 3s, and then so I think 1 or 2 4s, and that was really exciting, and just because it makes breeding a lot easier when you have Dittos with high IVs. And now with these with hyper training, you can max out the IVs on a Ditto after reaching level 100. That's, I guess, it'll be a bit of a grind to get your Pokemon to 100, but once you do, it'll be totally worth it. You can breed with this level 100 Ditto, and it's going to make things a lot faster.
Yeah, especially if you need to get ready quickly for tournaments, especially the international, which we know is soon. You're going to want to have some sort of breeding ground established because, remember, we don't get the connection with Pokemon Bank from our old Gen 6 games until January, I believe the Japanese website published.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, is that we probably won't get it until the new year. And so we're going to have to make sure we're going to have to get by with everything we have in Sun and Moon, which means starting from scratch.
That is very exciting on one hand. It's like in the anime when Ash finally left for Hoenn, the Hoenn region, which was a long time ago now. But he left all of his Pokemon in the laboratory with Professor Oak, and all he left was with Pikachu. So in a way, we're kind of doing something similar where we're really starting from scratch.
Yeah, we're going to be starting all over again in a new region, and we're going to kind of have to build up our teams again, build up all our resources, and kind of get back into the grind of things.
But with that being said, with regards to bottle caps, obviously you're going to want to collect them and keep them, make them useful when you're trying to max out your IVs. And it's probably I would recommend a number one priority to catch a good Ditto, with a good nature, like 4 of the most common: adamant, jolly, modest, and timid. One of those 4 would probably be a great start to have. Get that nature on your Ditto. Doesn't matter what IVs it has, just max that thing out so that you can breed virtually everything from that Ditto, and you'll be set from there.
Yeah, and even then, having a convenient nature is nice, but you can get by with any old nature as long as you get that Ditto to 100, because once you get other Dittos with the natures that you want, you can start by getting that getting that nature on the Pokemon that you want, and then from there, using the correct items. If you haven't already looked into a guide on breeding mechanics, I believe there's one on Nugget Bridge you can find that teaches you how to breed in X and Y. And if the mechanics stay the same using the items Everstone and Destiny Knot, then yeah, it'll be easy to carry over abilities, natures, and IVs going forward, and it's going to make breeding Pokemon totally possible and easy for anybody, veterans or newcomers.
Yeah, I'm hoping they retain all the old stuff. I don't want to be seeing this 2 steps forward, 1 step back again type of thing.
Well, I'm definitely thinking that from what we've been seeing, it's going forward and forward, and I'm hoping and I'm imagining that Sun and Moon's just going to make breeding even easier, which is really exciting. At least that's what I'm thinking it will be. I mean, I guess they could step backwards, but I think they realize how positive of a change that was, and so hopefully they continue to make breeding more accessible to everybody.
Yes, and aside from breeding, probably the second most important thing you'd want to save your bottle caps for is obviously not to use them on random Pokemon caught in the wild, but save them for your Island Guardians, or say the Ultra Beasts. We don't know if they're going to be allowed in VGC or not yet, but those would probably be good things to save your bottle caps for and use them in hyper training.
Yeah, definitely gonna want to like wait for those one-off Pokemon and use your bottle caps on those because typically you can't breed those Pokemon. And if we see any legendaries allowed, like we've seen like Pokemon like Zapdos legal in formats like this, and if you can only catch one of those in the game, you're gonna want to make sure that you can get that Pokemon to 100. Just get the right nature and ability on these Pokemon, and then from there, all you have to worry about is just getting the Pokemon to 100, and then bottle caps can fix those stats and make it so that it's the most competitively viable Pokemon. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to, soft reset as much. You maybe just soft reset to get a good basis so you don't have to use as many bottle caps, but it'll make things a lot easier.
Yeah, and I can't imagine. Could you imagine if they allowed the Tapus to be bred? It doesn't seem like they're that kind of Pokemon, but it would be pretty shocking to me if we could breed them.
Yeah, that's always silly to see, especially like those like big Pokemon like that coming out of an egg or something like that. One of the funniest ones to see bred, even though it wasn't a legendary, was in X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. If you were breeding a Kangaskhan and it hatched from the egg, and then you had a baby already there, which is just silly. I think it would also be equally silly to see the Tapus hatching from eggs because they're like these big legendary, although maybe not legendary Pokemon, and yet you're just like breeding them casually like any old Pokemon.
Yeah, definitely save your cap. Definitely save your caps for them. Bring your Guardians to Mr. Hyper. He will definitely help you out with that. Ultra Beast, same thing. If they are going to be allowed in VGC, obviously you're going to want to do something similar with them, with your bottle caps. So obviously just those two recommendations for hyper training. Save your bottle caps. We don't know how restrictive or hard they will be to get. Save them for Ditto and your legendary Pokemon that cannot be bred.
So I guess moving forward, the next big feature we could talk about, I remember early on, a lot of people were throwing around rumors like Pokemon are going to be able to have 5 moves or something like this Pokemon I saw had 5 moves, or there was like rumors bouncing around about that, and I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, we're not going to have a 5th move or something like that. But then we kind of did see that introduced with the introduction of Z moves. And Z moves are going to be defining this generation, especially the competitive battling aspect. I'm sure they will be very big in VGC. They're kind of replacing Megas because we saw that Megas are no longer going to be allowed in VGC, but Z Crystals will be. And so what do you think of this, Steven, this new feature, and how it's going to impact kind of VGC?
So I know hopefully everyone has experienced the demo that was released last month. So if you played through that, you know how Pikachu got the Z Crystal and you were able to see this firsthand for yourself. How it had its, standard 4-move set there, 4 moves in its move set, and it also had the Z move on the side. So it really did act like a 5th move, which was really cool. And I'm just really interested to see how players around the world figure out how to use all the different types of Z moves that are coming. A bunch of them seem like a lot of fun to both enact in person and just to watch on your game. But it's just going to be really cool. I'm excited for more great animations.
Yeah, they're going to be really flashy. And it's also just kind of fun how many of them there are going to be, because we've already seen that they've kind of hinted at that there's going to be a Z move for each type. So at least 18 there. And then some certain Pokemon have special Z moves to themselves. And we might even see further Z moves than that. So there's going to be a lot of different variety in Z moves. And instead of being like a mega Pokemon where it takes up a whole Pokemon slot and then kind of dominates the battle, this is just one move of the game. It probably can't turn the tides too much, although I guess if you use it correctly, it can. But it's going to be really cool to see how people implement these into their strategies in team building, because you got to, foresee the moment that it's going to be the most useful, or what Pokemon do you want to have your Z Crystal, because now you can use it on any Pokemon on your team, whereas Megas were a lot more restricted to the Pokemon that got Mega Evolutions. It's going to be opening up opportunities for all kinds of different Pokemon.
Do you see these as, I guess other than Eevee's setup move, do you see these as nuking attacks? As a nuke move?
I could see them doing like a hefty amount, but I don't think that they're going to be OHKOing every time. Like, I think that they'd have to have a really, really high base power for them to be doing that, but we've seen that even moves with high base power, such as like Explosion, after the nerf that happened back in 5th generation, I believe, we've seen that move fail to one-shot Pokemon now, and so as long as the base powers are not overly ridiculous, I don't think they're going to be OHKOing Pokemon, which is fine, but since you only get to use one per battle.
Now here's another thing. It'll be interesting how players choose to use these Z moves, whether they try to anticipate using them or playing against them. When do you think it would be best to use them in a battle? Would it be better early game, mid game, end game? Because just thinking right off the bat here, end game doesn't sound like the smartest time to use a Z move. Especially if it's just a powerful attack. You'd want to get it off to get an edge in battle quickly.
Yeah, you want to pick up KOs earlier because then it really limits your opponent's options. And so using Z moves earlier is probably going to be for the best. And we'll also see, you got to be careful when you use them because you don't want to, maybe waste it on, like, let's say you have your opponent has a low health Pokemon in the back and you want to attack this full health Pokemon to get the most out of it, but they end up switching it. You really have to read what your opponent's going to be doing and, waiting for the perfect opportunity to get the most out of your Z move. You want to really not waste it because only once per battle, it's going to be a huge aspect to it.
Yeah, I think another thing that has been confirmed about it is how if you're going to have a Z move, you need to have another, standard move in your set there that has the same typing. So let's take Flamethrower and Inferno Overdrive, for example. That's the fire type Z move there. When we're in a battle, like, there will be situations where, you can predict, well, what's safest for me to use here? Will Flamethrower be safer for me? If my opponent's going to switch out on this slot? Or am I risking anything by using a Flamethrower rather than Inferno Overdrive? Because say, if Flamethrower is going to pick up the knockout or just do damage, why waste your Z move that turn? Depending on the situation.
Yeah, that's going to be a big guessing game to it. And also another big guessing game is just going to be team preview. What Pokemon has the Z move? While I'm sure in the beginning we're going to see some centralization, or maybe not in the beginning, but towards the middle and end of the format, we'll have like typical Z moves that you're expecting to see. But in the beginning, it's going to be a bit like all over the place. You really don't know what Pokemon your opponent's team is going to have that Z Crystal and then that Z move. Although I guess if you're using things like Alolan Executor with the Frisk ability, you can kind of get rid of those guessing games. But Frisk is not the most common ability, so you're really going to have to just kind of play carefully and ready for anything because any Pokemon can hold a Z Crystal and use a Z move, and so that's going to be wild and unpredictable at the start of the format.
Yeah, other than Pokemon that get their exclusive Z moves, or suppose like the Guardians that get their own Z move for themselves, I imagine that a lot of people are going to gear towards the better offensive typings. So things that hit a lot of things for neutral and don't have that much of the resistance. So things I can think of off the top of my head are like water, fire, dragon, and ice. Those are really good offensive typing. And there's not that much that resists or is immune to most of those moves. Most of those move types. And I guess Fairy to go along with that, right? It's only resisted by all three types, but otherwise it's pretty good against the rest.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that we have to wait and see how they play out with Z moves. What are going to be the best options for them? And I think one of my favorite things about them going forward is just going to be these silly dances and poses that the trainers are going to be doing during battle, and the Pokemon doing kind of silly stuff too. Like we've seen with one of like Pikachu's Z moves, it like jumps on the trainer's head, and like the trainers are going to be doing all kinds of flailing arm moves and dances, and people are going to be doing those at the desks or at the tables during their tournament matches, and it's going to really just breathe a lot of life into the tournament, make things more fun. People are going to be laughing and having a good time just watching these crazy Z animations go off.
What I'm hoping for is people bring plushes of their Pokemon that has the Z move. They also, nail down the choreography of whatever the Z move dance is. And then so they do it in unison with the game and their Pokemon doing whatever they're doing in the game with the plush.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you can really reenact these if you have a plush or something like that, and you got the moves down. I know before a tournament, instead of maybe practicing VGC and my strategy and stuff, maybe I'll just sit at home and make sure that I got all the Z moves down so that I can really show off to my opponent I really know what I'm doing. Another fun thing that we're going to be seeing, at tournaments, a new feature that was introduced was this new battle format called the Battle Royale, which is kind of like a free-for-all, a 1v1v1v1, or 4 players all fighting for themselves. And I think that's going to be kind of fun to see. Before we talk about it further, but I just want to mention, I think it'd be really cool to see this as like a side tournament or something at Nationals, or some of the bigger tournaments, maybe even a regional too. Just playing in the Battle Royale and fighting for yourself and seeing who has the best, 1v3, or I guess 1 versus 1 versus 1 versus 1 strategy. Do you, try to conserve and play defensively, or do you go out all out offense and try to wipe the entire field? It's going to be really interesting to see it. But I think the Battle Royale is actually a really fun new feature, and I'm glad to see Pokemon kind of add that into Sun and Moon.
Yeah, I wonder how the online capabilities will work with this, but you're right in that it'll be a neat new style to play in for tournaments and just on the side for fun. I'll imagine just a bunch of people playing this as a fun new format to play in. So it's going to be exciting. Of course, it'll be a great side event for the larger tournaments, Worlds especially, when you can play against some other players from different regions. And I guess the internationals will do that too, because people are getting flown out and stuff. But I'm excited for it, getting to play a free-for-all finally.
Yeah, it's going to be a totally different feature that we haven't seen in Pokemon before. And if you've got like 3 friends sitting around with you and you're not really sure what to do because team battles can, kind of go all over the place in terms of like balance and stuff like that. Whereas if it's, everyone for themselves, you're going to see all kinds of fun things, like especially if you're all in the same room as each other. There's going to be teaming up. There's going to be like people strategizing like, well, he's got more Pokemon left, so we should all target him and stuff like that. And I think it's just going to be like, it's going to lead to a lot of fun times, a lot of like low stress, just fun battling. And battling for yourself in a format that we haven't ever seen before. It's really cool.
Yeah, if you get sick of VGC 2017 or just sick of, playing in VGC stuff for a while, which, it'll happen. It's natural for every format we go through. Eventually down the line, you'll want to take a break, so you'll have Battle Royale to do that with.
Another one of the new features that I'm really excited and wanted to talk about, and it actually seems pretty relevant to VGC, is this new QR scanner feature that they showed in, I believe, one of the trailers, and it's really cool. They mention how you can like upload these teams as a QR code and then scan it, and you can get the Pokemon onto your game to battle for yourself. And that's going to be really cool moving forward. The using this QR scanner to kind of try out other people's teams and stuff like that. You're going to be able to share teams really easily with your friends and try out all kinds of different strategies and stuff like that. It's going to be really good in the beginning of the format when, nobody knows what exactly is the best and what to use, but people have found these kind of cool teams that, use either the Pokemon they're most interested in or kind of a cool duo that ends up being really strong. And so being able to share teams so easily now without having to, go through all the effort of breeding and getting all the Pokemon ready for battle now, you can share teams a lot easier, which is going to be so fun.
Exactly, and I see there are 2 really great things that the QR codes are going to do for the game. And the first is for team building. So when we all know how team building groups in the Pokemon community, they've all branched off into all sorts of different areas and stuff like that. Well, people form team building groups to help them, obviously build their team and just grow as a player, have practice, etc. When you can instantly share your team like that with your group, and then everyone can play with it quickly. It's kind of like, again, like Showdown in the actual game now, where you have this set team for you ready to go. That's going to help with team building. And the second thing I wanted to mention is for brand new players who are, either really brand new to Pokemon or for competitive Pokemon at least, they're going to have this option to, I don't really know where to start with a competitive team, and I don't necessarily know if I want to spend the time building one. But if there's this easy access QR code where I can get a, good competitive team to play with, then that'll get a lot more people interested in playing VGC and hopefully start attending real life events.
Yeah, that's great. It's going to be a good way to start off playing VGC with a a team that you don't have to even build yourself. It's going to be all done for you, and you'll just be able to get right to playing, find out if this is something you're interested in, and from there, you can kind of tweak that team to your own liking. You can, or start fresh and build your own brand new team from there. And like you said, team building groups, that's going to be huge for them, sharing teams with each other so everyone can get a feel for it, and you can build with each other, get an idea of what the team is weak to, and it's just going to help VGC moving forward a lot.
I think that with the newer players thing, how hopefully they find an interest in using some kind of competitive team. And again, we're not sure if your QR codes that are scanned in from somewhere can be used in actual real life tournaments. So hopefully it garners enough interest for people to, first off play. And if they want to come to an event, hopefully it gets them interested enough to actually breed their own team or, create their own team in game. So that'll be good. I wonder how locked in these QR codes are going to be. So I think we've talked about this before, but not on the show. How when a QR code goes up, I imagine all these slots in the battle box or the box are going to be locked in. So I don't know how freely people will be able to move in the Pokemon slots on that team around. So it'll be neat to see, some of the more popular players who put up their own QR code teams to see how many other people are using them and if you'll be able to recognize them on BattleSpot just because of the alignment of all the Pokemon on that team preview page.
Yeah, that's a fun thing that I actually hadn't thought of yet. You can really get an idea if you're playing that QR code that you've been seeing everywhere, that team that everybody's been using. If the team's lined up exactly the same, then you might be seeing the same team. And I guess another feature that kind of goes along with this, we've mentioned it earlier in the show because it's VGC related, but the new feature Battle Teams is something else really exciting. You get to, kind of like a battle box, where you have your Pokemon ready for battle and you can choose that team for competitive play. You can now have multiple teams registered for this, and on top of that, you can, overlap Pokemon. So let's say you had a Salamence that you wanted to use on multiple teams, and it's the exact same moveset and stuff like that. You can just put it in both of your battle teams and test both of them out and see which team you end up liking better. Is Salamence on this team better, or is this team with Salamence better than the one before? You can probably hop onto BattleSpot and something like that and just keep practicing and trying out different things. And I believe you mentioned in the last time we talked about this, Steven, another thing you can do is take two of the exact same teams with 5 of the same Pokemon, and maybe you just don't know the 6th yet. You can kind of, mess around and test a bunch of different 6th Pokemon on that team at the same time through the use of battle teams.
Yeah, and to go along with that, both just with testing out different slots and having the same Salamence on the same team, how, on the contrary, for the alignment of your Pokemon in the box, say for the QR codes, say there is a popular team that's running around during the format for a week or a month or something, you'll see that, it'll be common, and then someone else could do the opposite thing where they'll have the exact same 6 Pokemon in the same alignment, but nothing is the same about the team. So that's just a funny thing that could happen. We don't know how all these systems are going to work yet.
Yeah, and another thing that I know I have mentioned it to you and other people at the local Premier Challenges as a joke, but something fun that could happen with the QR codes, although I doubt they'll end up working this way, is we can run the grocery store QR code tournament, where you go around and just find items with QR codes and scan them on your 3DS and see if you end up getting a Pokemon team. I doubt it'll end up working that way, but it's just something fun to think about. If that were possible, and you could just get random teams by scanning any old QR code. But that's just kind of funny. I guess we could probably move forward and talk about the next new feature that the Pokemon Sun and Moon website has for us, which is talking about ride Pokemon. And this is definitely not too relevant to VGC, but it's something as a casual Pokemon fan I'm really excited for. Although, I'm not sure if Steven shares the same opinion as me. Steven, what are your thoughts on the ride Pokemon?
So, this isn't like a brand new feature, because we had them in X and Y. We got to ride a Mamoswine and something else, right? Rhyhorn, I think a Rhyhorn on the west coast of the region. So, those were neat little introductions to them. And I know we're going to get new different kinds of riding Pokemon. We get to go in the water, go up in the sky. And I guess we had Mega Latios and Latias too. But I actually really like the HMs and having those special abilities to help you traverse around the regions of the Pokemon world.
Yeah, I personally just think that, freeing up the ability to have whatever moves you have on your team is a great thing. And, you also don't need to have Pokemon with HMs always with you to kind of traverse over the region. You can just call upon these ride Pokemon with just one Pokemon sitting in your party because maybe that's what you needed at the time. You needed to go out and catch a bunch of Pokemon, or maybe you're hatching eggs or something like that. It allows you to get around a whole lot easier without having to, manage all these different HMs and stuff like that.
Yes, well, we're still sticking to traditional Pokemon, very much so. Game Freak, and it's pretty evident in all these trailers how they are really revamping the formula for Pokemon, and hopefully this is getting a lot of people interested in playing Sun and Moon, and for us specifically, we want to see a lot more players playing VGC. But with Ride Pokemon, I think it's going to be pretty enjoyable. I'm going to have fun with all the different types we can use. Maybe it is just limited, but looking forward to it and some of the other new features that are coming to Sun and Moon. So I guess another thing we have is the clocks in the games are set 12 hours apart. I think it would be pretty stupid to have your Sun game all the time, you're playing the entire time in daylight, and a Moon game playing the entire time at night. I don't think that's very wise to do, because I would like to have a change in scenery, depending on which game I'm playing. So hopefully it's just your Sun game, whatever your clock happens to say, that's the regular time. For the Moon game, it's just 12 hours plus or minus.
What we saw in the trailer, I'm pretty sure it's that, except you're not, I think Moon is the one that's normal hours, and Sun is the one that is nighttime during the daytime.
That literally makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I know, but it's also kind of confusing. Like, Pokemon Black and White, if you go to the store and you're like, oh, I want to get Zekrom, let me get Pokemon Black, and then you go home and then you play through the game and then you find that you're supposed to catch Reshiram, and you're like, hold on a minute. I mean, I know the covers typically show you which legendary you're getting, but, we've always had those kind of flips like that, in Pokemon, so I don't think it's the silly, it is a bit silly, but it's not the worst thing to see.
As long as it's not Perma Sun or Perma Moon, I'll be okay with it. As long as daytime and nighttime change at some point in the games.
Yeah, I think it'll continue to change like normal, and that's going to be fun. It's going to be cool to, if you are playing in the inverted version, to get a different view on things. If you typically play in the afternoon, it's going to be nighttime, which is maybe a time that you don't normally get to see. And it's just going to be cool.
Yeah, and another thing to move on from there is this was a feature introduced in X and Y, being able to change the way your character actually looks. And the fashions feature is returning to Sun and Moon.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are excited for the return of that. It makes sense for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire to drop that feature, considering that you were playing as Brendan and May, and so you kind of want to look like the traditional characters from Ruby and Sapphire when you're playing in the remakes. But, now that we've got new original protagonists again, we can kind of put our own spice in them, make them look however we want. And it seems like they've only made the customization even deeper and even larger. All kinds of changes you can make to the way your character looks now, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. I enjoyed that back in X and Y. I know that pretty early on I found a look that I liked and just stuck with it for the rest of that generation, but it'll still be fun to kind of just go back and change the way your character looks just to mix things up a bit.
Yeah, I also found a style I liked for the character's avatar, and I usually just stuck with it and kept it. And another thing I can think about here is there are going to be people who make their characters look like themselves, which is reasonable. But to go a level even further is when you go to tournaments, people are going to dress as their avatars.
Oh, that's true. It's totally possible with all the different kinds of customization you can do with these new characters. That's something I hadn't actually thought about.
And especially when the characters are the avatars are going to be actually in the scenes now. They're going to be standing behind the Pokemon and not just off screen throwing the Pokeballs out. You'll get to see them and then look up at your opponents and say, "Oh wow, you're actually dressed as your character."
Yeah, that's something really cool. And yeah, that's I know another feature that you just mentioned in passing there that I think is really cool is the trainers are visible during battle, and that's something that I think is awesome, especially with character customization. You get to show them off for more than just a brief glimpse when they're throwing in the Pokeballs. Now you get to see them throughout the whole battle. And that'll lead to realizations like this, like, oh wow, you are dressed exactly as your in-game character. How fun is that?
Yeah, I'm excited to see what people come up with, and if there are any funny designs people can come up with.
Yeah, there could be some funny hats that players end up implementing in real life, and going out and making it or buying it or something like that, and then wearing it to a tournament. But if you see your opponent is wearing a Z ring, then definitely be ready to see if they're dressed as their in-game character.
Yeah, they're gonna have that animation down, and it's also nice. I think we can also remove our hats.
Oh, we can go hatless?
I think so. It's a first. That's exciting though, but I think that's enough for fashion here. Some of the other features that we could talk about, but aren't necessarily that important here. There's Pokemon Refresh, there's Pokemon Bank, which we already mentioned is coming out in January. Same features like we had in X and Y. You can transfer your Pokemon from previous generations, a one-way trip. So, once they come over, they can't go back.
Oh, is it a one-way trip from Pokemon X and Y and Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire to Sun and Moon?
Yes, it is.
All right, that makes sense. We've very rarely seen the ability to transfer Pokemon backwards. Actually, it hasn't been that way since Pokemon Generation 1 and 2, where you were able to transfer select Pokemon back and forth between the generations. But yeah, and I guess something else we haven't mentioned is the ability to transfer from the digital versions of Pokemon Red and Blue. And while that's not going to be too relevant for VGC, because we know that the Pokemon aren't going to be allowed, because they won't have the Pentagon or whatever equivalent Sun and Moon will have, it'll be fun to be able to transfer the Pokemon that you caught in Pokemon Red and Blue forward to the new generation.
Yeah, people had fun celebrating Pokemon's 20th anniversary with the downloadable original versions of those games on their 3DSs, so they can send some of those Pokemon they used over to Sun and Moon to enjoy the adventure even further with them. But I guess maybe we can talk a little bit about some just from the officially released Pokemon on the website, from the trailers. We can talk about some of the Pokemon we think will stand out for the format.
Yeah, moving forward, there's going to be all kinds of new Pokemon, and we're going to have to wait to see how viable all of them are. Just a quick note before we do talk about the Sun and Moon Pokemon, I've been done a bit of reflecting on what X and Y introduced, and if you discount the Mega Evolutions, there weren't very many Pokemon introduced in X and Y that ended up being relevant for VGC. Like the two big ones that I can think of were like Talonflame and Aegislash, and from there, you saw the occasional Greninja. And so I'm really hoping that this generation introduces more Pokemon that are very relevant in VGC. And I think we can already not really assume, but there are a lot of Pokemon in this game that seem to have a lot of potential. All of these new Guardian Pokemon introduced all have these terrain abilities, which I'm sure will absolutely be relevant. But the first Pokemon that I want to talk about is I'm going to be picking Rowlet when I start the game. I'm already locked in on that, and we saw its final form. I believe the name is Decidueye, and I really, really like the design of it, and I just really want it to be relevant in VGC, but just because of how much I like the Pokemon.
Yeah, it is cool looking, and before we talk about Decidueye, I can't believe you dissed Sylveon. Sylveon was Gen 6.
Of course. I you know what? When we talked about this beforehand, we did mention Sylveon, but then I forgot about it. It's because Sylveon wasn't relevant until 2015. It wasn't the most popular without Pixelate Hyper Voice, but you're right. Sylveon was absolutely something from Gen 6 that made a big impact on VGC. But moving forward, back to Decidueye, it changed typing from Grass Flying to Grass Ghost, which I thought was something that you didn't expect to see when a Pokemon has a dual typing at the start, like Bulbasaur, which was Grass Poison. It remained Grass Poison throughout its lifetime, and you expected it to be a Grass type Owl throughout the entirety of its lifetime, but they made it Grass Ghost in the final form, which was really cool. And then when they introduced its signature move, that traps in the opposing Pokemon, I was just like hooked. I was like, wow, that is awesome. I'm really hoping that that's relevant in VGC.
Wasn't it something with chain at the end?
It's Spirit Shackle.
Spirit Shackle, okay.
You're not totally wrong. It says it's a ghost type physical move, and the opponent cannot flee from battle or switch out for an ally. And so, trapping an opponent in is definitely something useful, especially if you want to ensure that you're going to be hitting that target with a Z move or something like that. So it definitely could be relevant. We just have to see what kind of stats it gets once it's officially released and we actually have the games in our hands.
Yes, this is true. And speaking of the other two starters, we do see how Litten and Popplio finally end up as Incineroar and Primarina, respectively, turning into Fire Dark and Water Fairy. So what's really cool about the starter triangle here is they all have really neat types that could be relevant in VGC. These aren't brand new type combinations. We've seen these before. We've seen Grass Ghost in Trevenant and Gourgeist. We've seen Fire Dark and Houndoom. And Primarina shares its typing with Azumarill and the new Tapu Fini, right?
Yes.
That's the Water Fairy one?
Yep, you got it.
So they have some neat typing, which I think hopefully will be pretty relevant for the new format, given some of the Pokemon that have been revealed already. So, looking forward to seeing what these starters can do. Everyone loves their starter Pokemon. Hopefully, they will be a bit more relevant than some of the others have been in the past. Not to say that starters have not been relevant in the past. We've had stuff like Infernape, and when the starters got Megas from Gen 1. Those are pretty neat to see. But hopefully they will have some viability, and depending on their base stats and hidden abilities, that they will be useful.
Yeah, and we've also brushed up on, or we've mentioned in passing, the Tapu Pokemon, the Guardians, and these Guardians are definitely going to be impactful on VGC because they have these new terrain abilities. They all start a terrain upon entering the battle. And it's kind of similar to weather, except that you can have a terrain and a weather both on the field at the same time. And we've seen in the past how relevant weather has been in VGC. It's pretty much had an impact on every year. And, something similar to weather, these terrains, they are definitely going to be making a big splash in VGC 2017.
Excellent play on the word splash there. But I guess based on appearance, which one looks the coolest to you?
Based solely on appearance, I've been in love with Tapu Koko ever since it was first introduced. I thought that Pokemon was so cool. And I was like, I really want this guy on my team. Who knows when we'll actually end up getting it, whether it's before you beat the game or after. But that one's probably my favorite. But they're all really cool, design-wise. Which Tapu do you prefer, Steven?
I'm a huge Tapu Bulu fan. That is the Grass Fairy one. I like the big hat it wears, and I like how it's not seeming to sit in a little capsule like Tapu Lele is, and Tapu Fini a little bit, even though Tapu Fini looks like it's in a shell.
Yeah, I definitely agree that Tapu Bulu does have a different design, and I definitely really like Tapu Bulu because it looks something like out of a Zelda game, and I'm a huge Zelda fan.
Oh yes, we both know we're both huge Zelda fans, and I just like, it's got the, because it is a grass type, it's always going to be associated with the color green. Green is also my favorite color, hence being a huge fan of Link in The Legend of Zelda 2. So that's a little side note, but I agree with you. Terrains are going to be pretty important for the first time in VGC, simply because we're not wasting move slots and turns to actually throw those terrains up, and instead they're going to be auto set, just like we've had weathers in the past.
Yeah, you're right, and that's exactly what made weather so relevant in VGC was Pokemon with abilities that auto set them, because, wasting a turn and a move slot to get these set up just wasn't always worth it. But setting it upon turn 0, the minute that you send that Pokemon out, is a huge jump in viability. And we'll have to see how relevant all these terrains are, which one's the best, and how, what Pokemon they end up supporting alongside them. It's really exciting to see, because we know the Pokemon that love to abuse weather, we've seen Ludicolo or Chlorophyll Venusaur, but now we're going to have to see what Pokemon are going to be abusing terrains.
And maybe there will be Pokemon using the weather moves or terrain moves to manually set them up. And, while it's not usually the best thing to do, we have seen teams in VGC's past, so 2009, before anyone other than Groudon and Kyogre had Drizzler Drought, people had to use Sunny Day or Rain Dance manually to use those kinds of teams, or to abuse those weathers. And, we saw in 2015, in 2014 too, a lot of Scarf Politoed had Rain Dance to, help deal with some of the Mega Tyranitar and Mega Charizard trying to mess around with their rain. So, we'll see how much this changes, we'll see how much this affects the use of terrain moves, if at all. But I guess to go along with that, we're not really sure how much weather we'll be seeing in the format, just because we don't know what's going to be in the format, because the official Pokemon that have been released in the new Pokemon we've seen released in Sun and Moon, I don't believe any of them have any weather changing abilities.
No, we have not, and so we'll have to wait to see if there are any past weather ability Pokemon introduced, like Politoed or Ninetales or Tyranitar or Abomasnow. And you can't forget Hippowdon, but and Aurorus, don't forget Aurorus too. We never really saw Snow Warning or Aurorus much, but if it's legal in this format, it could make a bit of an impact. Moving forward, though, I kind of wanted to ask you, Steven, what Alolan form Pokemon do you really want to see in VGC, or either you're excited to use or you just want it to be good because of you like the way it looks? So I'm talking about the new Alolan forms, which I believe have only been applied to Kanto Pokemon, but they changed the looks, changed the typing and the abilities, and they might get new move pulls. Who knows? We have to wait to see. But which Pokemon are you most excited for?
So yeah, you are right how it's only affecting the first generation of Pokemon. And, this is obviously to abuse the introduction of Pokemon Go, and hopefully that brought out a bunch of Pokemon players to get Sun and Moon, which seems to be the case. Pre-orders are going through the roof, setting records and stuff like that. But to get back to your question about which Alolan form I want to see viable in VGC, I actually really like Ninetales' design. I'm not sure if it's going to be any good, but I'm hoping it will be. So just moving on from that one, the two major ones I actually think might have a presence, but I'm unsure of still, obviously, because we've yet to see anyone in real action, is Alolan Marowak and Muck. Simply because I like their designs, obviously. They got that darkish feel to them, and Muck obviously added the dark type to it. Marowak especially because, it's one of the few Pokemon that was explicitly killed in a Pokemon game, or stated to be killed in a Pokemon game, is Marowak from Team Rocket and Lavender Town. So now that it's kind of funny that it actually took on the Ghost type officially. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And Muck just looks amazing. Looks like rainbow sludge or rainbow sherbet pudding, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's true. And it's kind of interesting that these again, sadly, are two types that we've seen before, Chandelure and Skuntank sharing the types with Alolan Marowak and Alolan Muck, respectively. But they've got all new abilities and movesets to kind of go along with these, and so we'll have to see how relevant they end up being in VGC. I could definitely see them both making a big impact just because of all the fairy types that we have seen introduced, and all the Guardian Pokemon are fairy types. And Fire resists Fairy, and Poison is super effective on Fairy, so they definitely could be Pokemon that you could see being relevant in the VGC 2017 format. And I guess, for me, the Alolan form that I'm really excited for While you kind of stole Marowak from me, I think another one that I wanted to mention was Snow Slash, or I guess Sand Slash, because I think it's got a really cool design. I mean, Sandshrew, even though it's like adorable, you gotta have a fully evolved Pokemon to be relevant in VGC. I think Snow Slash is really cool, and it's got a really cool new typing. Sadly, isn't the best defensively, but offensively, it's going to be pretty cool because we've seen a lot of fairies and, dragon is typically a popular type used in competitive play. And so having the ability to neutralize those dragons with its ice moves and keep those fairies in check with its steel moves is going to make Alolan Sandslash really cool for me.
That is an excellent choice there with the Sandslash. It appears we're fans of the new Ice-type looks for the Alolan Forms. I guess the only restriction here is Marowak almost always has had to deal with having a restriction on its held item. It's always needed Thick Club to do anything useful. So maybe turning into a Alolan form will change that. That I am not sure about. Hopefully it can stay away from Thick Club, but doubling your attack isn't the worst effect for an item to have.
No, that's absolutely a great effect, and it's really strong. And yeah, while being limited on the item is a bit of a drawback, we've seen Pokemon thrive without the ability to really use an item. It's kind of like having a Mega Evolution. Marowak has to hold this item to get off a lot of damage. And while it can be knocked off, unlike a Mega Evolution, Marowak will be doing a lot of damage as long as it manages to hold its item, which is similar to Mega Evolution, and I think it's going to still be very relevant and obviously powerful.
And I guess we've been going long enough here, so there isn't really that much more metagame we can talk about simply because we have not seen the full Pokedex yet. We do not know if Ultra Beasts are going to allow. We do not know how the Your Time feature officially works yet. We don't have a full understanding of that system. But by the time the games come out, that'll be probably flushed out immediately. Someone's gonna hop on BattleSpot and figure all that stuff out so that everyone else gets an understanding, even while you're still playing through story mode of your game. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, so I guess if we have nothing more to carry on our show for this week's episode, we're going to head out of here, get out of your hair so you guys can eagerly await the Sun and Moon games. Just literally watch the clock count down until that happens so you can start playing your brand new Pokemon game. We're both excited here. We hope everyone else out there is too.
Yeah, I know I will be literally just watching the clock this week. As I said, it's going to go by terribly slowly just because we're all anticipating this game. And I can't wait for it to come out. Once we finally get our hands on it, I just won't be able to stop myself.
Yeah, exactly. And we are aware that the game has been unofficial, or the game, both the Alola Pokedex, a bunch of the base stats, and a bunch of different information has already been leaked. We have been trying to avoid those as best as we can because, well, personally for me, I have not seen most of the new Gen 7 Pokemon yet. So we are trying to retain some surprises when we actually play through the game because, again, we are still fans of playing Pokemon.
Yeah, I want to get the most from playing the game and get a bunch of surprises. This time around, Pokemon did announce a lot of stuff, and so I want some things to be saved for when I actually buy the game and I'm playing through it to, get surprised, see some Pokemon that are brand new and it just pops up in the wild. That'll be a really cool thing for me to see.
Yeah, it may be difficult for the first few weeks of the format, especially for when we talk about these kind of things on the show, just because I don't know how far along I will be in playing my game, and still probably want to retain some of those brand new things, just for myself to be surprised by. So it may be difficult for us to talk about the metagame full on in the coming weeks. I'm sure by the end of November we'll be fine with that, and we can go full on into what the format's going to be like, and I'm sure a bunch of people have already covered it, stuff like that. But we're going to be really excited for that. And I guess with that, we can finally get out of here. You guys can find us on iTunes, search for the Hyper Voice. Our show will pop up. We have our email address so you guys can send us feedback or questions. We can talk about your questions on the show, especially with the new format coming up. Just if you're interested in hearing about a certain team strategy or a Pokemon you think might be viable and would want to hear our thoughts on, send us a quick email about it. We'll talk about it on the show. So our email is vgchypervoice@gmail.com. Send us some stuff there. We'd be very excited to talk about the brand new Pokemon and format in the future. And lastly, we are both on Twitter. You guys can find us there. Alex, your Twitter handle is
at LexiconVGC, and you can find Steven at
I am at Super Morioka. That will do it for the Sun and Moon show, our little primer for you guys. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. We are going to be bringing you, obviously, some pretty fun things when Sun and Moon comes out. We're very excited. Can't wait for the tournaments, and I just can't wait to play VGC 2017.
Yeah, guys, get excited. Count down the moments, count down the days. This episode will be going up in the middle of the week, so you won't have as long of a wait as us now sitting here recording it. But I know it's going to drag on. Just, keep watching the clock. The more you just stare at it, the faster it'll go.
Yep, should be a very exciting week for gaming in general and us Pokemon fans. That'll do it. We'll see you guys next time for more Hyper Voice.
See you guys later.